Okay, we're live now.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Hello, everybody. Welcome to our very first live chat Q&A session presentation here in the Small Breed Dog Training Group. I'm very happy for you guys to be here. I have Chelsea Murray here, who is the business owner of Positive Futures Training and Behavior. She's also my boss. I also work there as well. And so we're going to talk to you guys today about some different concepts around life in a multi-dog household, living in a multi-dog household. And then because we're here in the Small Breed Dog Training Group, after we kind of get through some general information about ways to set yourself up for success, we're going to talk about more so the dynamics of multi-dog households with large breed dogs and small breed dogs as well. And if you guys at any point, this is very conversational, so if you guys at any point have any kind of questions or anything pops up while we're talking that you kind of want to ask about, please feel free to put it in the comments and we will address your questions there as well. But I also have a few prepared questions, so we're going to go ahead and get started with those. Very first question that we have for you today, Chelsea, is what kind of management do you use to keep the peace in a household of multiple dogs? For everybody who doesn't know, Chelsea lives with 3 Alaskan Malamutes, so that can be very challenging in itself. It's a lot of dogs to live with. So they're wonderful dogs, but it is a lot of dog.
It is a lot of dog. Yeah. And I think the really cool thing about training, which I know that you get being a trainer too, is that every single household is really different. And so one household might need the use of different management tools than another. And so I think it's always important to kind of address the dynamic in your household and where you might have problems. And I find that really helps you then evaluate what kind of management tools that you're going to need. So if anyone doesn't know, management is any tool that we use in our home to help prevent problems, like a fence in your backyard. It doesn't teach your dog how to come when called, but it does prevent them from running away. So we can use those same kind of management tools in the home. For me personally, in my home, I have crates for the dogs. We also have baby gates and we have X pens. So depending on the age of the dog, I've got a teenager in my house right now. She just turned 1, and we had a little bit more management when she was a puppy. We started to phase a little bit of that now. So our X pens are in the garage, but who knows, they might end up coming back out. But I find that creating separate spaces, creating safe spaces for your dogs are really the things that you want to do in your multi-dog household, and making sure that every dog in the home, even if everybody gets along really well, has their own safe space. Just like when you were a kid growing up, you probably had a bedroom where you could go to and kind of, read a book or get some quiet time. We want to make sure that all of our dogs in our home have those safe spaces. So I like to use management for that as well, to make sure that, for example, my young teenager can't go bother my older dog who really just wants to rest in peace, right? We need to make sure that those boundaries are set up, and management definitely helps me do that in my home.
Yeah, awesome. Okay. Our next question here is, what everyday situations do you see that become common causes of conflict in multi-dog households, especially because that's a really big part of both of our clientele is we're working a lot with pet people who have dogs that may not be getting along the best, and they kind of want us to come in and figure out what's going on and ways to both prevent that from happening and then also address it so that it doesn't happen as often and going forward.
Yeah.
So what do you normally see, like whenever you're working with clients and you're kind of seeing these recurring issues in different client homes of multi-dog households? Like, what are those common issues that you see? And are there any kind of ways that you think those can be prevented?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Whenever we're talking about dog training in multi-dog households, prevention is always better. Oftentimes I find that people just kind of throw their dogs together way too quickly before they know the dogs, before the dogs know each other. And that is when we start to run into problems, assuming that, they'll just work it out, right? If there is a small problem. The most common issues, if we get called into a home for behavior consult, oftentimes people are already having problems. They're having dogs that are fighting or getting into disagreements. And the most common triggers for those, it can be conflicted play or play-based problems. So again, in my household right now, I've got a young dog whose energy requirements are like through the roof. And I've got a 9-year-old dog who like really would just like to sleep most of the day. And that change in energy can become a problem because my younger dog needs a lot more. So if I were to let my younger dog kind of bully on my older dog and really pester her until she wanted to play, we could see conflict come out of that, even if both dogs like each other and are social. We often see problems arise if there's already tension in the home in small or narrow spaces or during moments of excitement. So if we've got dogs that are running down the hallway and they bump into each other, we could see a problem happen. Or if we have something super exciting, like maybe my in-laws are coming over, my dogs love them, right? And so everybody's getting jazzed up and excited. And if the dogs are bumping into each other in certain circumstances there. And then the other really big problem that I see are high value resources. So this could be something like a food bowl. If the dogs are really hot and thirsty, could be a water bowl. And we might see it pop up even with just toys, around the home, stuffed animals, things like that. So we don't have all of these problems in every home, but these are kind of the main ones that we see reoccurring, that we always want to make sure that we're evaluating carefully and learning how to read dog body language so that if I start to see a problem, I'm addressing it right away instead of letting a small problem become something much bigger as that relationship gets degraded.
Yeah. That I see that a lot between my two as well, because Pocket and Phoebe. Phoebe's a little bit more she's a little bit slower to warm up to play with other dogs, and she and Pocket are like best friends. Pocket is her girl, but Pocket can also be very rude whenever she's trying to initiate play. So Phoebe's not necessarily giving her any indications that she wants to play at all, and Pocket would like to, so she comes over and tries to start like humping her, like as her invitation to play, and that is so inappropriate. So I'm always the one that's like interrupting that before Phoebe has to, because Phoebe will not appreciate that if you let it go on for even more than like a couple seconds.
100%.
And it's really nice too, because it's gotten more conversational because I've interrupted that like so many times, and not in like a like, hey, cut it out kind of way, but literally just like, oh, Pocket, like that. Immediately,
hello, what are we
doing?
Right?
Yeah, she immediately stops, and now it's turned into like she'll kind of start, and then she'll sometimes stop on her own, and then we'll offer something else that's way more appropriate. Like she'll come over and kind of like mouth at one of Phoebe's. That's their weird thing. They like mouth at each other's front legs.
Yeah.
Or she'll come over and do like a play bow or something like that. So she's finally starting to kind of get the message, and it's taking less and less because I'm so consistent in interrupting it. And now she's like, oh, I should select from a different behavior instead if I want Phoebe to play with
100%.
me. And that, reduces conflict.
Well, and I think too that a lot of that comes down to an owner really being able to read dogs, which can be very challenging because everyone understands the really big, like, oh, let's play. And we do a big play bow and the tail is going, right? And everyone usually understands the like, hey, cut it out. Showing the teeth, growling, harsh stare. But there's so many little things in between that can look so benign, right? Like when my older girl is like, please don't play with me. She literally is still. She's doing nothing.
Yeah.
She's letting Daisy lick on her ears, and that looks so benign. It doesn't look like a problem, right? But we know from experience that that type of behavior really is bullying. And the fact that one dog is choosing to not engage, sure, she's not showing the big signals of dude, back off, but she's not engaging, right? And so that's my indicator of like, oh, hey, she doesn't want to play. Let's interrupt you, or let's go do something else on your own since you seem to want to do something. And so I think that can be really hard for pet owners to identify that balance of like, is she ignoring her or is she gonna play? Oh, but look, now they're playing. Maybe it's not an issue, right? But even play that is a result of conflict, right? Of one dog being kind of bullied or pressured into it is usually not good play. And it's not a pattern of behavior that we want either dog to be rehearsing.
Yeah.
We do have some questions popping up. Do you want to do those now while we're kind of going through?
Yeah, might as well.
Okay.
Okay, so we've got, what do we have here? What signs would you consider red flags during play that the dogs are no longer having fun? Ooh, that's a good one.
That is a good
Yeah.
one. So I think that it doesn't even necessarily have to be that they're not having fun anymore,
Mhm.
right? I would just say, is the play appropriate? Signs I think that play is appropriate are both dogs giving and taking equally. One dog's bouncing up and then the other one turns around and bounces up. We see calm, relaxed play, like the bodies are both wiggly. There's a lot of bouncing around. Vocalization is okay in some breeds, like for example, me with
Oh,
Malamutes.
yeah.
Oh my gosh, our play is loud. So it doesn't always mean that something bad is going on, but you can definitely see a shift. Like, does one dog choose to opt out? Right?
Mhm.
Are they starting to take breaks? Is one dog maybe starting to give corrections to the other dog? Maybe we're seeing, a nose muzzle punch to the side, or maybe we're seeing teeth that are starting to show. Or we can even see play just escalate. Like, is this becoming more intense?
Mhm.
Was the
Everyone's
play
screaming. Yeah.
loose and wiggly, but now we're getting a lot louder and the noises are changing, right? So
Mhm.
generally when play starts off, it can be pretty good. And then the longer it happens, arousal can increase and we can even start to see appropriate play shift into something that's a little too much. So I would say definitely like changes of body language are definitely indicators that something is happening. A dog definitely opting out of play is a huge indicator, but even just that escalation of
Mhm.
play is an indicator to me as well.
Yeah. Okay. There's a couple more, I think, right? Yeah.
Yep. Here's the
Okay.
next.
How can you catch or identify predatory drift and how to deal with it or avoid it? That's actually one of our questions on our list. So
That is
you
one of our
are ahead of us. Yeah.
yeah. So totally normal for dogs to have prey drive, right? Or predatory behaviors. All of the play behavior that we see that we engage, like a tennis ball, that is all predatory behavior, right? Them seeing the ball, them getting to chase the ball, catching it. If it's a squeaky toy, maybe they grab it and shake it and then want to, rip its guts out.
Mhm.
That's all predatory behavior. And it's normal for us to see that in dogs. We like to see it in play. We like to deter it from normal behavior and behavior that is exhibited with other things. But we can see predatory drift when we see that predatory behavior towards something that the dog mistakes for prey.
Mhm.
So it's not something like a squirrel, it's not something like a rabbit. And we can see this between dogs in play if arousal level spikes, right? I know one of the things we were going to talk about tonight was like size difference,
Mhm.
big dogs versus small dogs. I have really big dogs, and some of my boy Lennon, some of his best friends are like 5 pounds. Obviously, 95 pounds to 5 pounds is very concerning of a
Yep.
size difference. Um, so we definitely want to watch out for this predatory shift in play when there is a really big size dynamic or difference between them. Um, Unfortunately, once this happens, there's not a whole lot you can do in the moment. But I would say that we would want to watch out for red flags like an increase of arousal in play. We would really want to make sure that we're monitoring and supervising play and that we know body language and know the other dogs, especially if there's a big size difference between the dogs. And it really also kind of comes down to you knowing your dog and you knowing the other dogs that
Mhm.
your dog is interacting with. If you know that another dog that is larger often spikes in arousal beyond what we're comfortable with, or, has a lot of prey drive and things like that, like those are all red flags that we would definitely want to take into account as we are setting up interactions between dogs. And honestly, when in doubt, basket muzzles, keeping dogs on leash, choosing for lower arousal interactions like group
Mhm.
walks and group hikes are all really good things to do if there's any concern of that being a potential.
Yeah. I'm definitely very selective about what big dogs I
Yeah.
let mine play with, especially Pocket, because she is very one of her like defaults whenever she's really amped up and she's really excited and she loves to play is to zoom.
Yeah.
So she loves like that's if you meet Pocket at any time in her life that something's exciting, she's taking off. And so whenever I'm introducing her to larger dogs, that can very quickly turn into, oh, let's chase the bunny.
Uh-huh.
And then it's no longer, oh my gosh, we're playing this fun game of chase. Now it's Pocket's running for her life and the other dog is chasing
Yeah.
her in a not play way anymore.
Yeah.
So I try to minimize that as much as I can with dogs that I'm not sure about,
Mhm.
right? Like if I know that they don't have much of a history of playing with little dogs, or like
Yeah.
if they do, they have been known to kind of be a little bit of a bully to smaller
Uh-huh.
dogs. Like we're not doing that. We're not
Yeah.
having like playtime in the backyard where you guys are going to chase each other around, because it's going to turn into not fun very quickly.
Yeah. And I think it's so important, especially with behavior like this, that while yes, there can be some red flags that
Mhm.
we might know about, there's also a lot of unpredictableness in this
Yes.
behavior, right? Like
Mhm.
that is the nature of this. It's something that all of a sudden the dog gets triggered, arousal's too high, and something shifts. So I think that it's always better with dogs, period, but also
Mhm.
small breed dogs, like to just be careful, to just
Yeah.
not put your dog in a situation where that's possible. We don't want to put Pocket, who likes to zoom, or small dogs that maybe scream and
Yeah.
run in a play group with large dogs that they don't know,
Yeah.
right? And if you're introducing, maybe you've got a good friend that lives local and you're like, hey, like, we're both social. Can this work? Start with something easy.
Mhm.
Start with a group walk and short intros once excitement of like introduction has gone down, and monitor that, because when arousal levels lower, when leashes are on, things are going to be a lot safer, and it's
Mhm.
going to be a lot easier for you to kind of see how the dogs are going to choose to interact. And if there is a concern of like, hey, that's a really big dog, maybe you've seen some high prey drive type behavior from that dog, but you still want to do that introduction, have the bigger dog be on a body harness and leash and in a
Mhm.
basket muzzle. Right. And so then if things go awry, you can step on a lead. You could step over a baby gate and a fence. The dog has a muzzle. Right. So, but I will say also that if you're actually legitimately concerned about that happening, maybe listen to your gut. Maybe there's something else
Yeah.
going on there that, you're kind of thinking about.
It may not be worth the negative traumatizing interaction for everybody, even if the dog can't put teeth on the little dog.
100%. 100%. Our goal as caregivers is to
Yeah.
protect the dog, and to make sure that their interactions are positive. And,
Mhm.
if that's a potential, maybe we find some small dogs where we're not worried about that behavior
Yeah,
happening.
for sure. Okay. Are certain breeds better suited to living with dogs that are either a lot smaller or a lot bigger than them? That's a good question too.
That is a great
Yeah.
question. And the answer is yes.
Yeah.
If we think about all of our breeds of dogs, they were bred to do certain things. A border collie is very, very different than a Malamute, which is very different than a Chihuahua or, a Jack Russell Terrier. All of these breeds have individual personalities that are kind of ingrained in the breed. And even from dog to dog, you'll see a big difference. I have 3 dogs of the same breed, and their socialness around other dogs, their prey drive, in nature, all very different from dog to dog. So I would definitely say that you should kind of know the general sociability of a breed if you've
Mhm.
considering adding to your home, in terms of making sure that you're doing what you can to set things up for success, for sure.
Mhm. Absolutely. I think that's all the questions at the moment in the comment section. But if
Yep.
anybody's watching and you have anything else that pops up to your mind, please put it in the comments and we will definitely address it. Okay, so just going down my list of questions that we had to talk about today. The next one that I have is, what are a couple of helpful skills that each dog in a multi-dog household should know? So just like easy foundations to help keep the peace.
Yeah. So I would say my first recommendation is to kind of build some generic interrupter that all the dogs know. So something like a positive interrupter. I generally teach something like the name game, where I say the dog's name and they give me eye contact. But I
Mhm.
also want a way to be able to grab the attention of everybody in the home all at once. And I
Mhm.
want this word to be exciting and really reinforced, so that if I see something fishy, right, like starting to
Mhm.
happen, I've got a way to, without adding fuel to the fire, get all eyeballs up, get them excited, get them focused on
Mhm.
something else. I then usually want a way to redirect them. Like if my dog is 10 feet away from me, do I have a way to get my dog to me or get them to a bed or a crate or something? So I usually like to teach
Like
a go to crate behavior or a go settle. And then I usually teach like a hand target so that I can move a dog from point A to point B without putting my hands on them. And I would say that those are the skills that I most often use in my multi-dog household. What about you? Because you live in a multi-dog household too.
Oh, I literally just gave my interrupter to them barking out there. Theirs is enough. So they both know that enough means if you come find me, you get a treat. I am very rudely not reinforcing it right now, but I will later. Yeah, that one's very strong for them. It is especially outside. So where I live is very dog centric and very dog friendly. And I live with part of my fence line up against a road that people will walk by with their dogs sometimes. Phoebe's gotten really great with a lot of her skills around reactivity and just like she's a different dog now than she was even just a year ago.
Yeah.
But that's one thing that is still her weakness, which is anytime she's behind a fence, she's in her own yard on her own turf, and there's a person or a dog walking by. That's whenever like we see full blown barking, lunging at the fence, and then Pocket's not helping. Although Pocket is at the fence as well for a completely different reason. She's like dancing at the fence. I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe she's, but like Phoebe sees that and they're together. And so
right.
Phoebe's like, yeah, like we're all here to fight you and tell you to get out of here. And so that's a perfect time to like really test that interrupter. I come around the corner and I'm just like, enough. And then they both come running and then they get a little treat scatter, which is really awesome. That I can't put enough value. It is such a simple thing to teach. You literally just have to pick a word or a sound or whatever it is and pair it with food 800 million times with each dog. And then you have interrupter cue that can be extremely reliable if you're really consistent with that. So that's my like number one.
Yeah, me too. The other thing I would add to that too is that at least for my dogs, it's especially young dogs, right? It can be easy for energy levels to escalate quickly. So in addition to that interrupter, having some kind of way to like, they take a breath, they sit and wait for a minute, we count to 3 and they get a cookie on 3, like some kind of way for them to be stationary so that they can take a breath before going back to something like play. And that will help you also manage that arousal level and make sure that things aren't escalating beyond what's appropriate. So I would say in addition to that interrupter, a way to redirect or a way to ask them to kind of be still for a minute and like, before they go back to things.
Take a breath for a second.
Yeah.
Relax.
It is hard.
Yeah. It's not that serious. Okay. So next question that we have here. And now we're kind of getting into the dynamic of large and small dogs, although we touched on it with a couple of those questions. But our next one moving on is what considerations are different in a household with small dogs and large dogs living together? So basically what's different in a household with different sizes as opposed to like a household with all of the same kind of dog?
Yeah. So I think even like beyond sizes, I would consider like personalities of the dogs and general traits of the dogs. Some might be more keen or more like predisposed to like reactivity or nervousness. And I think whenever you have multiple dogs in a home, you always need to kind of evaluate how is that one dog's energy level then going to impact everybody else in the house, right? If dog A is quick to jump and bark at things, but dog B is going to jump in, I might want to teach both of those dogs, even though they're not both having trouble with reactivity, right? That behavior so that everybody can settle down and they don't end up getting into a disagreement at the window when they're barking at the same thing, right? So even beyond size, I want to look at just general temperament, disposition, personalities. For size specific, we definitely want to make sure there are no problems with those things we were mentioning earlier, right? Those common problems of resources like toys and food, or even spaces, like, no, this is my bed, I'm going to guard this.
Yeah.
Because if there are those problems and those problems escalate beyond just a warning,
Mm-hmm.
it's a much bigger threat to that smaller dog's well-being, right? Than if they're both dogs of the same size.
Yeah.
Large dogs are strong. All dogs with teeth can be put in a position where they use those teeth. And obviously that bite is going to be harder on a smaller breed. So definitely really evaluating that relationship, making sure that if there are problems, around resources or spaces or reactivity, that we're addressing it with management and BMOD, so that it doesn't escalate into a bigger problem.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Okay, so my next question was about predatory drift, so we'll skip that because we already covered that. Last question that I have on our list is one that I feel passionately about as well, so that's why I put it on here. Why do we often see people describe their multi-dog households as the little dog being like the boss, right? Or like the problem or the grumpy one? I see that a lot with a lot of my clients. And of course, they're saying that like candidly, they're saying it with love. And it's my job to kind of talk to them about why that is. But it is something that I see really often, way more than I don't, right? Like whenever I'm walking into a household with dogs, with big dogs and small dogs, it's almost every time that there's some kind of comment or like explanation made that the little dog is the one with all of the behavior issues, right? Yeah. And the large dog is just, happy to be there and is, the little dog's hanging off their face, right? Biting them. And the big dog's just like, haha, this is funny, right? We see that a lot. And I think that personally is a cause for concern.
Yeah.
In terms of like the little dog's well-being. So I will let you talk about why we often see that.
Yeah. I think there can be a variety of reasons. In my opinion, this is one of those things that I think still stems back to the misuse of the word alpha from that 30s and 40s study that was scientifically debunked, right? So we know that dogs in homes, in domesticated settings, do not form strict social hierarchies. There is not one true alpha in the home, that relationship is actually much more fluid and we can see it kind of ebb and flow. So I think that idea is still being misused and that label of the alpha dog being applied in the home. And I can see that when a dog is displaying fear. I can see that when a dog has reached their tolerance or their threshold about some kind of interaction. I also see it with older dogs when they're in pain, when the younger dog's bouncing on them and the older dog's going, that hurts, please stop, right? But if the human who's observing those interactions is not aware of all of those stress signals and all of those small signals of communication, they might accidentally put that label of alpha on that dog that is displaying stress signals. And this is a huge issue because if we're applying a label that does not fit the situation, it causes us to misread what's going on and usually mishandle it. It also does not allow us to then determine what really is going on and what we need to do to address it. And so the problem continues. So I most often see that when somebody is seeing these communication signals and doesn't know what they are, and they think or might interpret that dog as, oh, that one's being the alpha and trying to, assert their place. But, it's really quite sad because there's usually a lot more going on behind the scenes. And I'm sure that you have more experience in this from the small dog world than I do, but I think that there's a lot less training that generally happens with small breeds. And hopefully everybody in this group is going to be like, not me. I'm a small breed dog. That's why we're here, right?
That's what we're here for.
Yeah. That's what we're here for. But I think that often happens. And so people will see behaviors pop up that aren't addressed and just go into this, whatever labels they want to put on that dog. And so I think that it can happen in any home. And I still see that label of the alpha dog being used in homes with multiple large breeds.
Mm-hmm.
But I do feel like that label, if there's a smaller breed in the home, that small breed might be concerned, in pain, stressed out, freaked out, right? And the person is using those labels on that smaller breed.
Yep. I see that a lot too. And like, I'll even sometimes go into homes where like we're working with a large breed dog, but I see really significant signs of stress with the small breed dog, but there's not much concern because they've kind of been written off that way, right? Like they're like, oh, well, this is just kind of how my dog has always been. It's just her personality. She's just bossy, right? Or he's just bossy, whatever it is. And then we kind of have to have that conversation where I kind of bring them down to understanding that, like, if you saw these stress signals in the dog that we're here to work with and address, you know, it would be a cause for concern. And cognitively, these dogs are not any different. So we should also be concerned about this. Let's have a conversation about maybe meeting about this dog next time. But yeah, I see that a lot for sure.
I do often wonder too. I think that when people obviously still use those labels on large breed dogs, right? Of that dog being the alpha or being the boss. Absolutely. But I also think that when a larger breed dog growls at you,
it's scarier.
It's a lot scarier. And so I think that people are much quicker to kind of jump on the training bandwagon, right? Versus smaller breed dogs, especially in a home with larger breed dogs, don't necessarily have that advocate going, hey, something's wrong here.
Yeah.
Right. And so that behavior gets rehearsed more often because the dog is stressed out and no one's addressing that stress. And so it keeps happening and it might escalate. And so people see that as a recurring issue in those smaller breeds in their homes, which I think will then lead to them, you know, using those labels on them too.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's all I have today. So if we don't have any more, I don't think we do. I don't see any on my end, at least.
No.
If we don't have any more questions in the comment section, I think we can go ahead and end our session here.
If anyone does end up tuning in later and catching this at a later time, please feel free to drop comments about, you know, multi-dog households or small and large breed dynamics into the comments. We'll get notified for it. So we'd be happy to, you know, keep monitoring this for a little bit if you guys tune in later and have some questions.
Yeah.
But we did get some good ones tonight.
Yeah, those were actually great questions. Yeah. I don't see who asked it, but they were great questions.
Yeah, it's not showing me that either, but very, very thoughtful. And, you know, it lets you know that people are thinking about their small breed dogs and those safety things, which are huge. That's a huge piece of owning a small breed dog, is making sure that we're keeping them safe, because the world is big and things can happen fast.
And they're very little.
They're very little.
Very tiny. Okay, well, I enjoyed this.
Yeah,
I hope that everybody else enjoyed it too. And if any of you, because I know that there's a really awesome, varied group of people in this group. If any of you are watching this or watch this later and you're like, you know what, there's a topic that I kind of want to talk about. It can be about small breed dogs, like, because that's why we're here, but also they're still just dogs. So like, it can be about any kind of behavior training topic that you just want to like nerd out about, you want to come on here and talk about, or if you have something really cool with your own dog that you want to like show us, you can absolutely come do a live presentation. None of us are here like critiquing you. We're here to learn from you. So I would be happy.
Or if somebody has a topic they want to learn about, but they don't necessarily want to talk about it, they just want to learn about it.
Yeah, that would be a good one.
There's a lot of trainers in this group that I'm sure would be happy to be nerds and talk about it. So
that would be awesome, actually. So lots of options. I want to make this kind of like a not super frequent because we're all busy, we all have stuff going on, but at least kind of a somewhat recurring thing that we have somebody come on here and talk about a certain topic for all of you guys. So please let me know if you have ideas or if you want to volunteer. I would love it.
Awesome. All right. Have a good night, everybody.
Yeah. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.